Welcome to Naturally Inspired Radio, where we expose what's broken in the healthcare system, connect you to real health solutions, and inspire you to take back control of your life. We want to help you feel empowered, informed, and free to live naturally without fear, confusion, or dependency. Download our latest book on real solutions for health at naturallyinspiredradio.com. Naturally Inspired Radio is a nationally syndicated show broadcast on over 100 radio stations, online platforms, video channels, and podcast feeds. Follow us on your favorite platform today, hit that like button, leave a comment, and engage in our special live stream chats, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Visit naturallyinspiredradio.com to learn more, register for our weekly giveaway, and explore past episodes. You can also connect directly with Tammy, follow her on all major social media platforms, and discover more about our featured guests and trusted radio partners. Are you looking for better health? Work with Tammy today and take the first step toward a healthier, more empowered lifestyle. Schedule your complimentary 30-minute lifestyle assessment to explore personalized guidance on nutrition, movement, toxin-free living, and natural beauty without pharma. Get started now and discover Tammy's preferred health products at naturallyinspiredstore.com or text Tammy directly 720-303-8868. Love the show and want to support the movement? Head over to naturallyinspiredradio.com and click on the support tab. There you'll find all the ways you can get involved. Join our Naturally Inspired community, become a preferred customer, attend one of our amazing live events, get your backstage pass for exclusive access, and connect to all things naturally inspired. Thank you for tuning in today. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
The notice said, amount billed $43,000 plus $43,000 for like an outpatient surgery. $43,000. Okay, that is it's kind of like, well, where did they come up with that number, folks? That is a made-up number. Whatever they have as they charge, so that's charge. So we have charges, and then we would have prices. What providers are paid. Okay, so the charge is $43,000. That is a completely fictitious number. When people say, oh, my husband went to the emergency room with chest pain, we got a bill for $150,000. That $150,000 is fake. It is a fake number that will never be paid by anybody except somebody who doesn't have insurance. So this $43,000, I got this $43,000 bill. The insurance company didn't pay it right away. So then I got a notice from the hospital saying, if your insurance company doesn't pay this right away, you're going to be responsible for that full $43,000. Now, what they didn't know was, they just sent that out. They didn't know that I knew exactly what their game was. And then I was a physician at that facility, right? Like, okay, dude. So when my insurance company paid, I got a notice, oh, here's what your insurance company paid. So the original charge, $43,000.
Yep.
What the insurance company paid, $4,100.
Oh my.
Less than 10% of the charge. And then the insurance company is telling me, you saved all this money.
Right.
No, I didn't. It was fake to begin with. This is fraud. This is an absolute fraud that nobody talks about. I have never heard a single speaker talk about this. Right? It's an absolute fraud. It's whatever you want to call it, racketeering, whatever. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that they have? Is there a couple of reasons why they have that big number for the charge? The big number for the charge, number one, in my opinion, is to scare the crap out of us. Scare the crap out of us so that we think that we could never do without insurance, right?
Right.
We could never
Right.
not have insurance.
Yep.
And doctors and providers will say, well, somebody might pay that amount. That's why it's so high, because some insurance company may pay that amount. Baloney. BS. That is not. Okay, now the second real reason I think that they have that big number for a charge is so when they have unreimbursed care where somebody doesn't have insurance and doesn't pay their bill, they can claim that they lost that much money.
Dr. Vecchio is a retired physician who specialized in radiology with subspecialization in women's imaging, practicing since 1997. She became politically active after reading the legislation for Obamacare and began speaking publicly on healthcare policy with an emphasis on market-driven ideas for healthcare reform. Dr. Vecchio is currently a healthcare policy fellow for Centennial Institute and healthcare issues instructor for Leadership Program of the Rockies. She's been a regular guest on internet and radio shows about a number of topics, including, but not limited to, the Great Reset, the Constitution, public-private partnerships and NGOs, farming, political corruption, electromagnetic pulse, electric grid failure, and the central world banking system. She has been a surrogate speaker for a presidential campaign and has worked with multiple members of Congress and Senate over the years. She has worked with businesses, policy groups, campaigns, and government officials at the local, state, national, and international levels. In 2017, she was invited to the White House to participate in a healthcare roundtable with the Secretary of Health and Human Services. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast with Dr. Jill Vecchio. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Naturally Inspired Podcast today. My feeling is that you feel like you need to do something about it because you are of strong moral character, and I appreciate that because
I'm as flawed as anybody.
We all are, but COVID has definitely showed us people's true colors. And one of the most egregious things I think I've talked about several times on the podcast and on Twitter and whatnot is how people have so flippantly mocked freedom.
Absolutely. Definitely.
I mean, we saw this really come forward with the trucker convoy in Canada. And that was that was shocking to me that people were able to mock freedom in the manner that they have been. So when I meet people like you who are willing to say, hey, I've done the research, I've got all these facts here, I want to tell people and share, it is just so refreshing. So thank you so much for what you've been doing. She's been traveling around the world. If you're just tuning in as an audience member, she's been traveling around the country, giving talks about things that are going on. And this isn't something Dr. Vecchio has started like just with COVID. She was on to this kind of work prior to COVID because things have been changing slowly in our country. And people need to know about it. So thank you so much for doing that work. I want our audience to get an opportunity to get to know you a little bit. So let's start with your interesting story. Where were you born? How were you raised? Tell us about it.
Born in Northwest Iowa, farmer family. And we had like sheep and pigs and cows and stuff like that. And then moved to Kansas City, Missouri when I was really young. And grew up kind of in the suburbs of Kansas City. So went from farm to a bigger city, kind of standard, wonderful childhood. Spent a lot of time on the farm, on my grandparents' farm, working during the summers, which was a gift that for any kid, I mean, you have a homestead, right?
Yes.
And it's such a gift for a kid to grow up seeing all of that life and baby ducks being born and baby pigs. And, it's just really, it gives you a whole different outlook on life.
Yeah.
And the hard work that's necessary. So I was working on my grandpa's farm from the time I was 8. So I've always had a job. And then high school, the usual fun stuff, college. And then I was a fashion design and merchandising major in college, and then went into retail for a while, and then literally woke up one day and I swear God told me go to medical school. So So I said, okay. And I literally went down at breakfast, went down and got the yellow pages and looked up medical school. And I called the medical school here at University of Colorado. And I called them and I said, I'd like to apply to medical school, please. And this is how stupid I was. And they said, excuse me, and have you taken the MCAT? I have no idea what that is. Is that something I need to do? Maybe you should come in and talk to somebody. So I did, and I had to do some prerequisite stuff and take the MCATs, and everything just fell into place so beautifully. Got into medical school and got to have some wonderful study partners. So it helped me get through it really well. And then I went into OB-GYN residency, had a problem with my the joints in my wrists. So I had to stop doing deliveries and surgery. Then I changed over to radiology. Then did women's imaging, a fellowship in women's imaging, which is mostly breast, mostly mammography and breast cancer stuff. So as a radiologist, and also read CTs and MRIs and all the usual X-ray stuff. And it's been a spectacular career. I'm now relatively newly retired. So, and in between all this, then when in 2010, I've had cancer a couple of times and autoimmune disease. And then when Obamacare came up, I was so tired of hearing polar opposite. You hear polar opposite stories on the news about what's in this law. So I decided to read it, 2,700 pages. And 4 months later, when I was reading it, I kept saying to my husband, you won't believe what's in here. Nobody's talking about this. This is horrible. What's in here? What's in here? So then I started giving talks about it because I'd done the research and I couldn't keep it to myself. And that really opened things up. And I ended up with leadership program of the Rockies, my own radio show for a while, and speaking all over the country on healthcare and Obamacare and what it was really in it. And the thirst for that knowledge was immense. So I was very busy and at the same time working full time. So it got a little overwhelming. Anyway, but that got me started on this trail of, I want to know this. I would imagine other people want to know this. So I do the research months, sometimes at a time, to really understand a subject, and like healthcare, because I had to learn all about the healthcare system. They don't teach us much about the healthcare system or the business of medicine. They teach us nothing in our training. So then I kind of went off on that.
That's maybe something people don't understand too. As a medical doctor, you're not just practicing medicine, right? Like you have to learn how to run a business.
Right. Well, as a radiologist, you're really employed by a bigger group and the hospital.
Right.
And then, which is very different than the physicians who are in private practice that have more control. Well, I'll show you in this talk, before Obamacare, 90% of physicians owned their own practices. They were self-employed, 90%. After Obamacare took effect, because of all the regulations and all the overhead, excuse me, I have allergies, and the overhead costs and the electronic health records and all the things they had to pay attention to, with increased risk of losing their license if they didn't comply with absolutely every regulation. Now, 90% of physicians, instead of being employers, are employees of big corporations, hospital corporations, and big physician groups. So they don't have the ability to make decisions on their own anymore, or even to hire the people they want to have working with them.
Right. That's a massive shift in the structure.
Massive shift. And we can talk about the real effect of that. COVID could not have happened the way it did if there were doctors who could still make independent decisions. Doctors were forced to comply with all the COVID garbage because they were owned by corporations.
And that was a setup, right? That was literally a setup for that.
Absolutely.
One thing I want to touch on is you mentioned that you yourself had cancer, and as a physician and someone who treated other people, what you learned in school and then what you learned through your own, health journey, did that change? Did your opinions change?
I found both of my cancers myself. Just like doing an ultrasound at the end of the day when I turned 50. How's everything looking in there? And I found a huge mass on my right kidney and kind of said, oh, that's not good. Thank the good Lord that everything, surgery was a cure, and thank heaven for that. And then I had breast cancer. I found that one too, naturally, since I was looking at my own mammogram. And so that's been nice to have that kind of control over your own life. You know, how many people get to say, I want to look at this, you know, and
right.
you know, you can go look at it. What was wonderful about it, I have no regrets about either cancer at all. The first one was very scary. The second one was very small. And it was very early. So I was fine with it. It wasn't a big deal. But what was really great about it was that now I could walk into a patient who was having to deal with a potential cancer and say, I've been right where you are. I know what you're going through. And I can tell you that it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And hopefully you'll come out at the end and say the same thing. It was, that was a huge gift because patients would immediately say, oh my God, you've been through this too. And it changed the whole dynamic, you know?
Right. There was a connectivity between you and patient like never before.
Absolutely. So no regrets at all. That was, in my opinion, that was a gift from God.
Yeah.
That I got to have that. So, yeah.
And did it affect the way that you looked at medicine? I mean, diagnostically, we're in such a good place with medicine, right? There's so many tools that we have with technology and whatnot, but did it change the way, like, did you search out different methods to treat health after that?
I didn't have to. Yeah, I didn't have to because the surgery was the cure for both of mine. And the nice thing was I already knew the docs that I knew exactly who I was going to go to for my surgery. I knew exactly who to go to get a reference for whatever I needed, that was really nice because, you know,
you could navigate the system.
Folks, doctors are very different individually. You need to find the right doctor or the right clinic for something if you have that option, which most people do. And most people think, oh, it's just it doesn't matter what doctor I go to. I'm telling you right now, it really does. And I had wonderful, wonderful docs that were already good friends of mine. So that was really great. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it opened my eyes for the first time to the fact that doctors, and as radiologists, you know, the doctors are all ordering, they're ordering tests. They're ordering lab tests and imaging studies. So CT, ultrasound, MRI, X-rays, and then writing prescriptions and ordering tests. It's like I had to ask a physician. I had a big cancer in my kidney. I had to ask somebody, will you listen to my heart and lungs, please? Will you do a physical exam on me? Just for the record, just to make me feel better, could you please do this? And then they looked at me like I was kind of from outer space. Oh, well, I guess we could. And then they're listening to your heart through your shirt. It's like, I mean, holy smokes. And now what I found out in kind of follow-up research, they're de-emphasizing physical exam to such an extent in medical school that the physicians aren't being taught how to listen to heart sounds, how to listen to lung sounds, how to really do a physical exam, to look at a person. We used to be able to look at fingernails and tell you some things that were going on. Right?
Yes.
The art of the physical exam was huge when I was in medical school in the 80s, that we took great pride in our ability to diagnose something just from physical exam. Doesn't happen anymore. There is no emphasis on it whatsoever. And it's gotten to the point where even in medical schools, the graduating students are making up their own Hippocratic oath. They're not taking a lot of schools are not taking, these are big schools, are not taking the standard Hippocratic oath that I took. They're altering it. And so much so that the students get to decide what their oath will be. And now their oaths are based on social justice. Folks, this is your future. This is a future of medicine in our country, is that these students are taking an oath that says, instead of like the oath that I took, standard Hippocratic oath, it's developed over the years, the language and so forth. But essentially it was, I believe that all life all life is sacred from conception through infirmity and death. And I will treat every patient as an individual based on their individual needs, desires, and requirements. How hard is that? That is the kind of physician that you want treating you.
Right.
Well,
Ethical.
now the students are being taught all of this social justice, including here at University of Colorado. I've done many talks there and debates and everything else. The oath that they're taking at many of these schools is rather than treating, I'll do what's best for the patient, it's I will do what's best for the patient based on what's best for society as a whole.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to treat my patient based on what is best for society as a whole. And I'm not kidding you. This has been going on for years.
Well, it's the death of the individual, right? It's the death of the individual.
It's not the individual anymore. And that's, you think about COVID, right? It was okay. We had physicians in Colorado that would refuse pain medication to a patient if they did not have a COVID vaccine.
Yes.
Just to punish them, That's unethical and immoral behavior, period. And we had, I'm sure you heard about the cases where kidney transplants were denied because, and the donor and the recipient of the transplant both agreed they did not want to have COVID vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty mutual consent.
Yeah.
But the hospital refused to do the transplant because they didn't have a COVID vaccine. Absolutely unethical, criminal behavior.
Absolutely. This, what you're talking about reminds me of Yoel Noah Harari's statement about data, that you actually are not, it doesn't matter if you want to hold on to your data. You shouldn't be allowed to hold on to your data because it's a matter of the good, the good for all, the greater good, right? It's all about the greater good. Data, helps society move along. So you no longer have the right to privacy or the right to your own data. It needs to be shared because this is for the greater good of society. Well, it's funny how, the tech companies and the elites are benefiting from this data.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, and that's when Obamacare started the electronic health records, forced every physician to spend $30,000 to $70,000 in their practice to do this electronic health records. And then they had to spend hours and hours transferring all of their chart data, their paper data into the electronic health record. All that was for data collection and exposure of the patient. So when they said Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, what it is the Patient Exposure and Unaffordable Care Act. So I call it PUCA.
Fitting, very fitting. It's interesting that, I've interviewed hundreds of doctors now. And the one thing that I always ask them is when did you see a change in healthcare? And a very, a consensus that I get back from people is that when medicine became compartmentalized, when they started with specific specialties, it changed the way doctors assessed patients because it became about treating just your heart. It came about treating just your lungs, or, if you need an orthopedic surgeon for your knee, then it became all about your knee. Doctors stopped looking at the body as a whole and forgot that medicine is an art.
Yes, I would think that probably was a change. But at the same time, you can't, what is really obvious is that you cannot know enough about everything, right?
Right.
And as a radiologist, we were expected to know a lot about a lot about almost everything.
Everything you could image, right?
Right. So we had to know a lot about a lot, but we'll never be able to know everything about everything, right? There's always somebody who knows more. And it's better, in my opinion, it's much better to have specialization, because when you're passionate about something, if you're passionate about knees, if you're passionate about sports medicine, if you're passionate about mammography and breast cancer like me, then and other parts of women's imaging, then you're going to do a better job at it. And you're going to do the research, and you're going to know, and you're going to want to make things better and do extra research and work with other companies on developing the new treatments or the new diagnostic cases. Whereas if you're just trying to hang on to as much knowledge as you can across all the boards. You can never do it to begin with. You can never know it well enough. And you're not going to have time or the energy to try and keep up or even make things better. So it was a necessary, the explosion of information. It's like, trying to take a drink from a fire hose, right?
Yes.
So the explosion of information required that we have that subspecialization. But you bring up a really good point, because in the 50s and 60s, before all of this subspecialization, the American Medical Association, the AMA, actually 90+% of physicians were members of the AMA, to have that kind of camaraderie and collaboration with each other, and to work with government a little bit. But the AMA wasn't all that. They weren't particularly political. They really were doctors joining together to support one another and kind of keep their knowledge bases up, and that sort of thing is really a supportive thing.
Right.
Well, the AMA now, because of all the subspecialization, and all the doctors now belong to their subspecialty groups, organizations, rather than the AMA, and then after Obamacare. So the time Obamacare passed, when they said, oh, the AMA supports this, the AMA at that time was only representative maybe 10% of physicians. Only 10% of physicians were members of the AMA. So the AMA support, and the AMA, they still use the AMA, right? Politically.
Yep.
And then once
when it's convenient, they use it.
Right.
And it works for them.
And the AMA was granted by the federal government, was granted exclusive rights to publish the coding books that every physician's office has to use. Every physician's office has to use two types of coding books, one for diagnostic and one for treatment, and the codes have to match up or the doctors don't get paid, right? So everybody,
this is for insurance, right?
This is by these, right? The ICD-9 and ICD whatever code books,
right?
So CPT and ICD, right? So those code books. So the AMA at this point makes far more money from that exclusive right to publish and sell those books granted by the federal government. They make far more money from that than they do from their members. Only at this point, only about 4% of physicians are members of the AMA. 4%. To say the AMA represents physicians around the country is an absolute lie.
So roughly how many specialty alphabets are there that people, we have pediatrics, obviously,
Yeah, surgeons, radiology, anesthesiology.
And those premiums are annual for every.
Yes, usually, yes. And it's not cheap.
No.
But usually your group will pay for it, or, it's an expense or whatever. A lot of doctors are dropping those memberships as well, because what are we getting for it?
And it's a way to shove you into a box, right? Because I can take this away from you, which is what we're seeing now with a lot of physicians. Right. I can take this sort of this membership away for you and devalue your worth in the marketplace.
Right. But what they've done, it's very clever. You had to belong to like your county or your state medical society in order to get a certain good price on your medical malpractice insurance.
Oh, tying it in that way as well.
Right. So they're in bed together for that. Yep. Otherwise, why belong?
You can't practice without
what are they doing for me, right? Yeah.
Wow.
So I was forced to belong, and the minute I wasn't forced, I dropped it, because it's like, what are you doing for me? You're selling me out, and therefore forcing me to do stuff that I wouldn't agree to otherwise. And doctors are it's like herding cats. I tried, right?
Yes.
An organization.
Yeah.
And it was literally, it's herding cats. And you would think that, and no, the physicians don't want to be involved in politics. Oh, I'm above politics. Well, I'm sorry, but politics isn't above you, because they're really interested in you. They're really interested in controlling you.
Health is a big part
you better open your eyes and start getting involved in learning stuff. But they didn't even want to learn it. They don't even want to know what's going on.
This is why I call it the medical mafia, because it operates like a mafia. It's extortion. You have to do this in order to be able to practice. And if you don't do this, you can't practice. And then they're constantly holding it over your head. Right. You do one little thing that doesn't step in line and they can just yank your license.
Right.
I was just commenting on something about how, the new hallmark of a good physician is going to be an unlicensed one.
Well, and with the whole medical malpractice with the costs going crazy, there were some like orthopedic surgeons. I knew 2 orthopedic surgeons who stopped carrying malpractice insurance. They let their patients know this is the deal. Here's, you're going to sign this form, but you got to know I don't have medical malpractice. So you're not going to make millions of dollars if any little thing goes wrong, and your frivolous suit isn't going to go anywhere because I don't have deep pockets.
Right.
That's what, a lawsuit isn't going to happen.
If there's no money to get.
Like nurses and folks like you don't get sued. Why? Because you don't have deep pockets. You don't have a lot of money to go after.
Right.
So the doctors always had to do that. So, and they never had any problems with it. But you think about, $40,000 a year right off the top before you've even paid rent or any of your workers.
And not to mention your student
That's a chunk
debt.
of money. Neurosurgeons were, I think, $150,000 a year. Just for malpractice
insurance.
Yeah. And OB-GYNs, neurosurgeons and OB-GYNs had the highest. Yeah.
That's so interesting you bring it up, because I always say big pharma is, obviously corrupt. We can all agree that big pharma's got major issues, but big insurance is even worse.
Oh, yeah.
And we haven't even even started to crack that can open.
Well, the good thing is that a lot of these companies I've never had a problem working with them, and I've done some expert testimony kind of stuff for some of them, but a lot of doctors in a lot of states have been allowed to group insure themselves through some state, like just in Colorado, we have COPIC in Colorado, where the physicians all pool the money and they self-insure for malpractice. Okay. And then COPIC kind of requires you to do this little risk management course or something like that. Right. And you have to belong to the state medical society in order to get your discount. But they actually do a really good job. I think the malpractice issues are not the companies themselves, because they're different companies that for the most part are kind of self-insurance things. But the problem is the lawyers. The problem is frivolous lawsuits. Right. And what doctors don't realize that is if they behaved a little nicer, spent a little more time with their patients, a little more understanding, a little more empathy, and better explanations of things, if they took that time, there wouldn't be nearly the lawsuits that they are. Because usually a lawsuit comes because something went wrong that was that a patient had signed a consent for, saying, I understand that this could go wrong. And, if there's an egregious thing like cutting off the wrong leg, please, patients need to have whatever compensation
is available to them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the frivolous lawsuits that are the problem, and doctors kind of pissing off patients, doctors not explaining things, acting like when something went wrong that they didn't care, or they'd stop talking to the patient because they thought if I talk to them, then they're going to sue me. Well, they're more likely to sue you
if you don't talk to them.
So it's a really silly situation when doctors are afraid to talk to their patients. It's just not right. Don't be afraid of it. If you made a mistake, own up to it. If you didn't, at least tell the patient that you're sorry that they're having to go through this, but it does happen sometimes, right? Right. It's
the infrastructure of healthcare is not supporting that kind of relationship, right?
No.
Because they're giving patients and doctors 10 minutes. I think it's down to 8 now, 8 minutes a patient or something like that. That they have to see. And then everyone's walking around on eggshells because there's this looming liability issue. Right. Nobody feels like they can talk openly. The communication is horrible because you have this looming, liability thing on your shoulders that you're going to get in trouble. And then you have the patient who is in fear. It's their health. Right. And so the whole thing's set up to fail.
Right. The malpractice companies used to tell physicians, if there's a complication, don't talk to the patient, notify us, and just stay in the background and be quiet. And I think at least one of the companies a few years ago started to change their mind and say, make sure you tell the patient, go ahead and talk to them, be empathetic, tell them that you're sorry that this happened to them.
Yeah.
Don't admit any guilt about it.
Right. But be human.
But yeah, at least, yeah, don't completely block them out forever, because that's just stupid. Then you're just asking for a lawsuit.
Absolutely.
I think this one company actually realized that was the case.
Yeah. Good for them.
Yeah.
Let's get into Obamacare. So let's talk about how this kind of came down the pipeline for you in your position as a medical doctor.
Well, we heard about Obamacare and, the single payer healthcare stuff that they wanted to do. And I got involved with a group before Obamacare passed. So it must have been around the fall of 2010. It was a group called Docs for Patient Care. They're still existing, but not in the same, not with the same business model that they were before. But we wanted Docs for Patient Care. The guys that started it did it in conjunction, like there were some congressmen that were physicians, congressmen and senators that encouraged them to start an alternative to the AMA, because the AMA and the vast majority of the societies in medicine, like American College of Radiology, American College of Surgeons, pediatrics, all of those are really being, the leadership of those is completely what we call leftist, right? Left leaning, and definitely, voting Democrat and all that. Not that Republicans are that great these days, right? But they definitely have a certain political leaning that I don't think and a lot of us don't think was in our best interest as physicians, and certainly not in the best interest of patients, because they were all buying into government control of healthcare. So anyway, the Docs for Patient Care wanted to be an alternative to the AMA. And so I spent a lot of time in Washington calling on congressmen and senators, got hundreds of them. We met with Speaker Boehner. Don't get me started on that. Yeah. And one of the things you realize pretty quickly is how useless politicians are.
Yes.
They were not willing to entertain a single solution that we had. And we had a whole list of really great solutions, things that could be passed legislatively that would really change the system. And they wouldn't even, oh, well, that will never pass. That will never pass. That will never pass.
Well, that's because their agenda isn't to come up with solutions. It's about keeping their donors happy.
Exactly. And let's face it, who are the biggest lobbyists on Capitol Hill? Insurance companies, Trial Lawyers Association, pharmaceuticals, and big healthcare.
Yep.
And, corporate healthcare. And who benefited the most from Obamacare? All of those entities. All of those entities benefited the most from Obamacare. When we were told specifically before they voted on it, oh, the insurance companies hate this. It's going to, they're screaming and hollering, right? It was a ploy, right?
Yeah.
Just to get us to support it.
Yeah.
And they've been the biggest winners, the insurance companies.
Yeah. What did you find when you got out there and you started, you mentioned you read how many pages was Obamacare that you had to read through?
About 2,700. It depends. The official congressional thing is like 4 volumes that are all, I think the stack is that high. I have it upstairs, but I think the stack is I used it for a doorstop for a long time and took pictures of it. Yeah. But, huge. And
I feel that's purposeful too, because who has time to do that?
Well, exactly. And, let's pass it so we can find out what's in it. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that had been used a lot even before Obamacare.
Of course. Yeah.
Not expecting or not allowing people to read it or not expecting it. And what you find out in Washington is that Washington is run by kids in their 20s.
Wow.
Every congressman and senator has their legislative assistants. So legislative assistant for healthcare, for, I don't know, spending or whatever, for infrastructure, whatever. And so we met with a lot of the legislative assistants for healthcare for different congressmen and senators. And these are kids in their 20s, most of whom have never been a patient. They don't know anything about healthcare. It was just like maybe their parents were big donors.
Of course. Yeah.
So, and those are those kids, a lot of short skirts and stilettos, which was kind of nauseating. I mean, really, you wanted to take a shower when you left Washington. But these kids don't know anything about what they're talking about. And the congressmen don't have time to look at everything because they're busy raising money.
Yes.
Right. So you don't get to meet with a congressman, and you certainly don't get to meet with Speaker Boehner or the leadership without writing a big check. Period. It is.
I had eye-opening moment when I watched, I think it was Matt Gates's documentary called The Swamp. I had no idea how much time they spend on the phone fundraising and how they have to go across the street because they can't do it inside of. I had no idea about all that stuff. That was an eye-opening documentary to realize it's like what you're describing right now is exactly what he depicted in that documentary.
Right. And most of them they're nowhere near the Senate, the congressional floor for hearings or speeches and stuff. Right. They don't show you the rest of the gallery because it's empty. You know, they go down and they'll have a little video of Mitch McConnell or Kevin McCarthy giving some speech in a microphone, but they don't dare pan out to see who's actually listening to that.
Because there's nobody there.
C-SPAN, but nobody's there because they're all fundraising or meeting with fundraisers or meeting with donors. That's how you get access. Otherwise, you don't get access.
It's all like a bad movie. It's all like more and more. I feel like every day it's House of Cards in real life.
Oh, it is. House of Cards was absolutely 100%.
Yeah.
And the dirty politics that go on, the threats, the intimidation, the compromise, right? Compromising, putting people in compromising positions after a few cocktails, whatever. You know, it's all the dirtiest game. When Peter Schweitzer, you know, you're familiar with him when he talks about all of the he's written a couple of books on kind of finance, the money games in Washington. It's fascinating. Peter Schweitzer does great stuff. You should have him on if you haven't already, because he's incredible. And he'll talk about the kind of legislation that they purposely will propose legislation to pit one industry against another so that they'll get donations from both industries. It's called a double milker bill. Or they'll pass they'll threaten to pass some piece of legislation that might put some industry like big tech or something, up against the wall and make them, it could be very expensive for them or make it more difficult for them to do their job or their conduct business. So they get big donations from all these tech companies to not pass this legislation, right? So they purposely propose stuff, not because they want it to pass,
because they need money,
just so they can blackmail people. It's blackmail.
Yeah, it is.
And
definitely.
It's amazing. And you can't be powerful. You can't be a powerful congressman or senator unless you raise a certain amount of money for the party. None of your legislation will make it to committee if you don't raise enough money. You'll never get on the committee you want. All the chairmanships are based on fundraising. Everything in Washington is based on money. It's always follow the money, right?
Absolutely. We've learned that more now than ever, having gone through COVID.
Right. Yeah.
What were some things in Obamacare that really stood out to you that you were wanting to talk about to physicians and the public alike, that you thought, hey, people like this? Because when I started hearing some of the stuff that was, happening, because it was a huge document, obviously, like you said, let's pass it so we can find out how it's going to work. You can keep your doctor, right? Remember that?
Right. And that was a huge, and there were 159 new agencies and committees and oversight things, 159 new entities. And when the Congressional Budget Office, every time a piece of legislation is passed or proposed, the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, is supposed to go through the legislation and say, okay, this paragraph is going to cost us this much money. This provision is going to cost us this much money. For that 159 new entities in Obamacare, the Congressional Budget Office didn't have enough information to give it a score of how much money it was going to cost. So they put down 0. So all the money that they told us, the cost of Obamacare, That was a fraction, just not even close. It was so inaccurate. And the Congressional Budget Office, even they had estimates for what the insurance policies were going to have to cost, which was $25,000 a year. Imagine. And what is it now? $25,000 a year and $8,000 to $10,000 deductibles, like you and I were talking about.
Yes.
So we're spending.
That's the reality of it. And that's
so the average family is spending $30,000 a year on health insurance that they will never use because they can't meet the deductible to even begin to use their insurance policy.
That's right.
Think about how much health.
That's how we've been living for years.
Right.
Yep.
Think about how much health care you could purchase. Do you use $35,000 worth of health care every year? No. And imagine, there are a lot of people who probably don't even need to go to a doctor, but every 5 years. Yeah. So that's like, what is that? $180,000 or something, right? $175,000 that you could use for catastrophic event if the doctors and entities aren't charging you their charges. So that's something that I would love to talk about for just a minute, if that's possible.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Because one of the things that I discovered, and I knew it kind of existed, but I didn't realize the extent to which it was such a scam, that I would love to pull up a slide if I could. I don't know if I can do screen share. Anyway, it doesn't, but I had a surgery. Let me just go through it like this.
Okay.
I had a surgery, and you keep getting these notices. It says, this is not a bill. This is not a bill, right? And it's kind of like, think of how much money is spent just sending all those things out to everybody. Why don't you just send one out to me, and then when it's time for it to be a bill, then send me that, right?
Right. I'm sure that's one of the paragraphs in that legislation, that they have to notify you what's being paid by your insurance company. So they have to right? There's some kind of red tape there.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm aware of those types of notices.
Right. So the notice said amount billed $43,000 plus. $43,000 for like an outpatient surgery. $43,000. Okay. It's kind of like, well, where did they come up with that number? Folks, that is a made up number. Whatever they have as they charge. So that's charge. So we have charges, and then we would have prices. What providers are paid. Okay. So the charge is $43,000. That is a completely fictitious number. When people say, oh, my husband went to the emergency room with chest pain, we got a bill for $150,000. That $150,000 is fake. It is a fake number that will never be paid by anybody except somebody who doesn't have insurance. So this $43,000, got this $43,000 bill. The insurance company didn't pay it right away. So then I got a notice from the hospital saying, if your insurance company doesn't pay this right away, you're going to be responsible for that full $43,000. Now, what they didn't know was, they just sent that out. They didn't know that I knew exactly what their game was. And then I was a physician at that facility, right? Like, okay, dude. So when my insurance company paid, I got a notice, oh, here's what your insurance company paid. So the original charge, $43,000.
Yep.
What the insurance company paid, $4,100.
Oh my.
Less than 10% of the charge. And then the insurance company is telling me, you saved all this money.
Right.
No, I didn't. It was fake to begin with. This is fraud. This is an absolute fraud that nobody talks about. I have never heard a single speaker talk about this, right? It's an absolute fraud. It's whatever you want to call it, racketeering, whatever. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that they have? So there are a couple of reasons why they have that big number for the charge. The big number for the charge, number one, in my opinion, is to scare the crap out of us. Scare the crap out of us so that we think that we could never do without insurance, right?
Right.
We could never not have insurance.
Yeah. And
doctors and providers will say, well, somebody might pay that amount. That's why it's so high, because some insurance company may pay that amount. Baloney. BS. Mm-hmm. That is not. Okay, now the second real reason I think that they have that big number for a charge is so when they have unreimbursed care where somebody doesn't have insurance and doesn't pay their bill, they can claim that they lost that much money.
Oh, yeah. Then it becomes a write-off for them.
Right? We gave this much in charitable care. No, you didn't. You gave 41. You didn't give $43,000 in charitable care. You gave $4,100.
They can also sell the debt to collections.
Now I don't know about that part. I don't know how they do that. Well, they're going to claim the $43,000. Yeah, it'll be bad debt, right?
Yeah. There's collections
we don't
companies.
call it bad debt necessarily as unreimbursed care.
Right.
So it's the same thing.
There are companies that, financial companies, recovery companies that go out and try to recover debt. So they pay pennies on the dollar for the debt. And then they send their bulldogs out to collect whatever they possibly can.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then that 4,100. So think about this. So we're spending, I think, we're spending let's say $30,000 a year for insurance that we're not going to be able to use because of the high deductibles and the ridiculous premiums.
Yep.
If you weren't given that charge, if you didn't have to pay that charge, if you only had to pay the amount, let's just even say the amount that the provider gets reimbursed, like the $4,100.
Yeah.
You could pay that yourself.
Absolutely.
If you were able to save $35,000 or $30,000 a year, you could pay that in cash.
Yeah. Again, it's a mafia model. They're
Yeah.
extorting you into using the insurance
Exactly.
by telling you it's this much when in reality, the insurance company is never going to pay that.
Right.
I first saw this scam when I was working in physical therapy. I became a physical therapy assistant and started working in practice. And part of my job was helping bill. And they were like, well, bill this because we'll only get that. And I was like, what? What? What do you mean?
Yeah.
What is that? And then you start seeing, well, you have to bill as much as you possibly can because you're not going to get what you need to get if you don't overbill.
Right. Or it's to make up for the people that aren't going to pay their bill. It's to make up for the people that don't have insurance. So we have to stick it to everybody and scare the hell out of everybody just to have it's all a joke. It's all an absolute joke. Yep. Because if a person didn't have insurance, but they only had to pay the $4,100,
you can do that.
They would find a way to pay it. I've done that. I did that when I was a resident, and I ended up going to Mayo Clinic for a surgery because nobody was qualified, under my insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't, to do the surgery I needed.
Yep.
So I made a deal with Mayo Clinic and said, I want total control over what's billed, and let's work out a deal. Mm-hmm. And I did, and I paid it.
Yep.
Now, if they'd given me some ridiculous charge routine, then it's overwhelming to try and pay that back.
Yeah.
Why are you trying? Plus, honestly, if we're going to pay cash for it, it should be a whole lot cheaper. We should get an extra 10 or 20% discount because we're saving the insurance company all that money for all these mailings, all the billings, all the hassle of billing and coding. If we just said, here, you know what? I'll pay for my surgery ahead of time before I walk in the door. I'll walk in the door. I'll pay for my surgery. And gosh, their cash flow is great. Cash flow is wonderful. They don't have to worry about collections because you don't get the service unless you pay for it. Right.
That's right.
I mean, why is it so much different than your car insurance?
Right.
Right. Why don't we just have a catastrophic policy, a policy that will cover cancers, major accidents, things like that. So you get the catastrophic policy, and literally I've heard those can be as little as $50 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Because what are the odds, right? What are the odds of this catastrophic event happening to you?
Especially when you're young.
$50 to $100 per person or something in your family.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're able to save a ton of money in an HSA. Mm-hmm. And you could help pay for somebody else's medical expenses. You could have a church or a charity that could have HSA, right? A church could have an HSA account only used for medical expenses for any of their, somebody who comes to them in the church or without, right? Somewhere else, or some charity. For crying out loud, we're really giving people. I would give to an HSA in a heartbeat to help people pay their medical bills.
Yeah. And if I knew that they were actually real charges, and that, I understand that we're grown-ups. We understand that doctors need to make money. We understand that hospitals need to make money. But this is something we are okay with. We're not okay with being scammed.
Right. And this
We're
is a
not okay
total
with you dumping
scam.
tons of money into government politicians to push legislation so you can sell more products we don't need.
Right. Exactly. Right. And that's a huge part of why Obamacare failed. Why all the state exchanges, why the state Obamacare exchanges failed.
Yeah.
Obamacare, the only way that it could succeed is if a whole bunch of young, healthy people agreed to pay $25,000 a year for health insurance they would never use.
Yeah.
That is the only way. So the reason the exchanges failed was because the young people weren't that stupid. They weren't that stupid, and in spite of the cute little ads with all the beer keggers and all that stuff, right?
Right.
So what the Obamacare exchanges found was they were only insuring people that were already really sick and had pre-existing conditions and used a lot of health care.
Right.
Well, that system isn't going to work. That's why it failed. And that's why everybody's premiums went sky high. And in Obamacare, the policies proposed in Obamacare did not have any high deductibles.
Okay.
They changed it. They changed Obamacare something like 80 times in the first 3 years.
After it was passed?
After it was passed, they changed it like 80 times without telling anybody about it. And one of those changes was the prices we would be paying now would be even higher if there weren't for the high deductible policies. Or they might be higher, but I think the insurance companies are just sticking it to us as much as they can because they can. Because
yes, they have complete
they're
control.
being allowed to do it.
Yes.
Right.
They dictate everything. And let's talk a little bit about patient care when it came to Obamacare, right? How did this affect patient care when a physician is essentially locked into a protocol where they can only do certain things? How did that translate with patient care?
Well, let's take the most obvious example of what changed after Obamacare took effect and everybody had to have electronic health records.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? You go into your doctor, you sit down, your doctor or the nurse or whoever is sitting at a laptop. The laptop is either on the desk or in their lap. They're not even looking at you as a patient, not even looking at you.
Accurate.
And then I tell you what, the visit could take 10 minutes if they were just taking notes. And then they go into their office and transfer it over because you have to wait for them to change. Oh, shoot, it went to the wrong page. Oh, now I have to go back. Now that didn't, dang it. It just erased everything. So now we got to start over. Yeah. It's ridiculous. You are wasting my time. In the first place, you're not even looking at me.
Yep.
You have no idea. I could have a monstrous big black and blue head and you would not have even noticed it because you're too busy in your freaking computer.
Yeah.
And you're wasting my time. So yeah, I had one physician, oh yeah, your first visit is going to be like 2 hours. You're going to get so much attention. Attention, my patootie. There was no attention whatsoever. The attention was to that laptop. And the only reason the appointment took 2 hours, there's like a 5-minute physical exam. The rest of it was because you're wasting my time by me having to sit here while you're entering things on a computer that you could do on your own time, not mine.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're lucky, I have a friend going through cancer in their family right now. And his complaint was that these doctor's appointments, they don't even get to see the doctor. It's a physician assistant.
Right. And that was another thing about Obamacare. Throughout the Obamacare legislation, there were provision after provision after provision for what we call paraprofessionals, right? So the medical assistants, nurse practitioners, like specialty assistants. Radiology has specialty assistants that do fluoroscopy and things like that. All of that was thoroughly promoted, and the role of the physician got smaller and smaller and smaller. The importance of the patient went away. In Obamacare, there was something like, God, I can't remember the number, so I'm not going to say it. But almost every provision in Obamacare started out with the Secretary of Health and Human Services has the authority to do this.
Right.
This Secretary of Health and Human Services, a cabinet position, had so much, their power was exploded. The Secretary of HHS was the center of the universe in Obamacare. The patient was a tiny little dot. There's a great poster that has all of these little connections and little circles and everything about that in Obamacare. Mm-hmm. This monster poster And the patient is a tiny little dot that you can hardly even find. And the physician is completely away from the patient in another tiny dot over here. The rest of it is all bureaucracy, paraprofessionals, but all bureaucracy and insurance companies, government and insurance companies. And I believe what I learned in Obamacare that was the most frightening thing was that whole thing was set up. And I've had disagreements with other physicians who have read it as well. They thought, oh no, they're just stupid. They didn't intend for the system to crash or whatever. And I said, no, they're not stupid. This is exactly what they've wanted to have for 100 years in our country. They wanted to have government control over all of healthcare. They want government control over all of our lives, to be completely honest. But they definitely wanted, once you control healthcare, you control the people. You control healthcare, money, and energy, and you control every
food
aspect of a person's life and education. You don't even have to have education if you control all the other three. Forget it.
It's just indoctrination.
But healthcare definitely. Obamacare was written, in my opinion, in such a way that it was meant to crash the healthcare system, so that they could then come in and say, oh, look, the system's bad. We have to take over the whole thing, because it's going to crash. It's going to go down, folks, just like the too big to fail, right? The banks. Government has to step in to save the day with single payer healthcare. They were dying for single payer healthcare.
Yes.
So if you make,
well, look at Canada now. Look at what Canada is able to control, right, with their healthcare system. They've now even brought in dental care, right? And people think, oh, their government's paying for our dental care now. No, the government is going to dictate exactly what dentists can do and cannot do for you. Right. This is just more control, and you're going to get the worst dental care you've ever had in your life.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. How long do you want to wait for that abscess to be treated?
Exactly. Well, I can speak to Canadian healthcare firsthand, because I had a baby in Canada, and I had a sick baby in Canada, and it was a 1-year wait list to see a pediatrician while my son had pneumonia. So we were taken to the ER via ambulance, because it was the only way to see a pediatrician, where we waited 14 hours with a wheezing, struggling baby.
That's horrible.
And, my mom paid into healthcare her entire life. And she, was diagnosed with lung cancer. And the last few days of her life, she spent in a hallway with duct tape on the floor and a curtain pulled at the end of a hallway, because there were no beds. And I literally felt like I was living in the 60s inside that hospital. That's horrible. People need to know this is the reality of government controlled healthcare. People think, private companies just want to get rich. They'll exploit everybody. The marketplace will take care of itself, because somebody will come along and provide affordable care, and you'll get what you pay for, and they will dominate. Well,
and especially, we've got Yelp and all of these ratings things.
No better time.
Yeah. I mean, how do you buy an appliance, right? You go on Amazon or computer, you go on Amazon. What are the reviews on this? What are the reviews on this place? And what the restaurant? You want to go to a restaurant? What have people said about this restaurant?
Yep. And there's no shortage of ways to express yourself about the care you've received.
Exactly.
Yeah. The marketplace works if we let it.
Right. Well, and free market healthcare failed. We haven't had free market in healthcare since Medicare passed in 1965. There has been no free market in healthcare. And before Medicare passed, we did pay cash prices, right? And doctors were allowed to give free care. Doctors aren't allowed to give free care most of the time, especially now, since most of them are owned by corporations. Those corporations, if I had a patient who really needed a breast ultrasound, but she didn't have any money to pay for it, I could go to the hospital administration and say, can we just give this to her for free? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it used to be that you couldn't give free care to a Medicare patient. Well, I think it's still the case. Since they're on government health care, you're not allowed to give free care, or it's considered fraud. You could be charged with fraud.
And they take
bizarre
Medicaid and Medicare fraud very seriously.
Right. And so people are allowed to get care, and the patients can choose not to pay for it. That's okay. But the doctors aren't allowed to give free care, right? I mean, there are plenty of instances where I know physicians that say, don't worry about it. We'll take care of this.
Yeah.
But we're not allowed to do it. We get punished. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a totally broken system. But at this point, it's broken because it's been so manipulated.
Hi, this is Tammy Cuthbert Garcia from Naturally Inspired Podcast. I don't like taking traditional over-the-counter pain relievers. That's why when I have pain, I turn to CBD. I have had great results using CBD. It's helped me with cramps, stiff muscles, the soreness that comes after long runs and workouts. For high-quality CBD, I go to Plenty Wellness. I love their CBD gummies and their lavender bath bombs. They have a wide variety of consistent, effective CBD products to choose from. So visit plentywellnesscbd.com, enter promo code Tammy to save 10%. Yes, that's clear. That's
Right.
clear. How has Obamacare facilitated what we're going through right now? So like we're seeing in California, a doctor, you can't even treat your patient the way you want to in California, right? There's a very strict protocol. You must use this, and this. How
Right.
did Obamacare set us up for that?
Just by the biggest thing was all the regulations and requirements on physicians with huge threats and increased fines for doctors that didn't comply. So physicians are going, every time a regulation is passed, let's say a doctor is in private practice, every time a regulation is passed, the doctor has to hire people, number one, to find out that the regulation passed, because they don't tell you necessarily. You have to find out the regulation passed. So you got to pay somebody for that. You have to pay somebody to interpret
The
the
legalese.
regulation.
Yeah.
What does this mean? What do I have to do? Can I charge like this? And literally, I've been on the phone with Medicare when they changed a code in the definition of the code. I'm like, how am I supposed to use this? How can I use this? Can we charge this for this and combine this with this? Well, you'll just have to do it and find out. That was their answer. You'll just have to do this and find out.
Which basically means we'll do it.
I can be charged with fraud and fined $10,000 because I'm doing this thing every single day, many times a day. So you're telling me what I'm going to find out in 6 months, that I've been committing Medicare fraud by the way I was.
Oh my gosh, we could go to jail for.
Yeah, $10,000 per instance. So you can imagine. So then you have to hire somebody to make sure that you can comply with the regulation and document that you've complied with the regulation to the insurance company or the government. And then all the billing and coding. Doctors had overhead that was something like 10 to 40% of their income was overhead, or was taken up of their expenses was overhead.
Right.
40% was overhead just in complying with these regulations and coding. I hope I made sense with that. But a huge portion of the expenses in your practice, and that that's not even counting rent, turn on the lights, and paying your employees so they can send their kids to college.
Right.
So you can imagine physicians are throw their hands up, and say, I'm done with this. Yes. I'm just going to either get out, I'm going to retire. A huge number of people retired. Or I'm going to go part-time, or I'm going to sell my practice to a big corporation or a hospital group. And so hospitals bought up physician practices right and left.
We saw that.
That happened. Yep. Hospitals, the last thing they care about is a patient. Believe me, I've worked with many hospital systems my entire career for 30 years. They don't care about patients, and they really don't care much about their doctors. It's kind of like, we called it Revenge of the C students. The hospital administrators typically aren't particularly bright. I've known a couple that were really great. Most of them are not particularly bright. They've worked their way up the ladder through the usual corporate methods. Mm-hmm. And they resent doctors' control drastically. So their favorite day is when they can when they can force a doctor to do something.
Do something. Yeah.
It's just like this sophomore game that's played all the time.
Right.
It's a constant power struggle.
It's interesting, the dynamic between these managing health systems. So like there's a manager for hospital systems, right? And they manage multiple hospitals. So you really saw the death of the community hospital, right? These management systems came in. Like in our area, we have Banner Health. Well, they're located in Arizona, but they manage many clinics and hospitals in Northern Colorado.
Right. So that's what Obamacare, it was kind of like a consolidate and control, right? Consolidate all the practices into these big corporations. All the corporations, there are so few of these really big corporations. There aren't that many of them really around.
Yeah.
And all the government has to do, and they're all donating to politicians. So blah, blah, blah. All the government has to do is go to a few of these big guys at these big corporations to say, this is what, Fauci, this is what he says to do.
Yep.
And they go, okay.
Yeah.
So then the mandate just comes right down the line.
That's
and
right.
Doctors can lose their licenses, lose their practices, lose their credentialing. And I tell you what, when you work that hard, I graduated from the 29th grade, essentially. 17 years of training, schooling and training beyond high school.
An investment. It's
17
money.
more years.
A lot of money.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
And your whole life is poured into this thing, and you're really hopefully doing really good work, and you're really of value to patients, and they just act like they could just take it all away in a heartbeat.
And what you described right there is the answer to why everybody who says, how would so many people be in on this? How could this
have to be?
They didn't have to be.
No, very small number of people. And folks, that's another thing. It's kind of like I do talks on the Great Reset.
Yeah.
And I've had people say, how could this few people in the World Economic Forum and blah, 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 do all this, have all this power and control? Okay, well, number one, they're insanely powerful, have a ton of money. You have the right connections. And honestly, throughout history, the history of mankind is written about a tiny number of people affecting entire cultures, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how are wars started? One guy assassinates this guy, two people. The
or one
rulers,
religious leader thinks he's right.
This king is angry with this king, and they cause devastation of huge swaths of their population just because they are two little despots going at each other. Because they pointed a finger at a whole bunch of people and said, you're going to war, right?
Yep. Yes.
I mean, the idea that people say, how can a small number of people, this like, okay, have you read a history book?
Yeah.
Do you look around? The United States is the biggest exception to the rule of a couple of very wealthy, powerful people making the rules for their entire country. I mean, monarchs have been the rule. The United States is the exception to a lot of these rules, right?
Right.
So that whole question to me is just ignorant. It's just tells me that you're not even thinking about history, or even the way it is in the world, of dictators and everything else.
Right. And it's a proven pattern.
Yeah.
What you just described with the healthcare system, that is exactly what has happened in the food industry.
Right.
We've had all these food companies at one point making all their wonderful little products, and bigger companies have come in and gobbled them all up over time, slowly. Now we're down to just a handful of massive corporations.
Right. Whatever happened to the
food system?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Whatever happened to the antitrust laws?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at big tech. You look at, there are 6, maybe still 6, maybe 5 major corporations that own every news outlet.
Yes.
5 or 6 at the most.
Yes.
Every news outlet is run. So you wonder why they say exactly the same things, all the same phrases, all the same talking points on every single one. It's because they're all owned by the same people.
Exactly.
All it has to do is come from up here. Farming is another huge thing that corporate farming is swallowing up. They're driving up the prices of an acre of land.
Yep.
They're making more regulations, making it more and more difficult for livestock
Yep.
farmers.
Yep. We just had a new bill here in Colorado, pertaining to chickens, how you can keep them. It squeeze down on anyone that's outside of the massive corporation of farming.
Right. Yep. And all these big corporations, they're the ones that are polluting. If there's anybody polluting water or, and air pollution and the methane and stuff it's the big corporate operations.
That's right. The industrialized monsters.
Yes. It's not the small farmers.
But it's the small farmers that are getting cracked down on, because this is a source that you provide of food to your community. You are giving people the alternative to step outside the system. How dare you do that? Right. And it's, again, a mafia type mentality. Use us or else. Right. And then you get these big corporate farms and like the poultry operations. They have one fire, like hundreds of thousands of chickens or turkeys are annihilated. Destroyed. Right. Or you have avian flu, like we had avian flu this past year. Yeah. Avian flu in Indiana. All it has to do is affect one huge corporate poultry operation, one bird, and the whole thing has to be wiped out. Yes. And people need to think about that. Like, how is this effective way to feed people when you're using these giant, facilities to raise food for the masses? How easy that they talk about terrorism. Well, how easy is that for us to be a sitting duck for another country to take down our entire food supply? We should have tons and tons of regenerative farms all over our communities. Right. Exactly. And the conditions that they keep these chickens and turkeys in are absolutely horrendous. Yes. Which increases disease in those animals. We get salmonella. You used to be able to slurp down a raw egg in a heartbeat without worrying about anything. Now it's, we have to cook it a certain amount because of these operations. Right. And it's a trickle down effect because our food affects our health. Right. And our health affects the health care system. Like it's all symbiotic. These infrastructures are symbiotic and they're all sick as hell. Yeah. I mean, the GMO and the Roundup thing for corn, because my father had corn producing companies and beef. And the GMO thing is just freaky. I spent my whole life pulling weeds out of cornfields. Yes. Pulling weeds out of cornfields. So it's now that you drive and every single row is exactly the same. Franken food. And they're pristinely beautiful and they're spraying the hell out of them with Roundup. Yeah. And simultaneously they're paying out lawsuits for cancer. Right. Right. At the same time. Right. Yeah. And granted, I mean, we couldn't feed people the way that unless you allowed people to have gardens. The idea that HMOs or HOAs are saying, no, you have a half-acre yard with beautiful dirt and stuff, and you're not allowed. You can have grass and water the crap out of your grass. Yeah. But you can't have a garden. Oh, biosecurity, Jill. Biosecurity. It's biosecurity. This is the new catchphrase we're going to hear about our food supply when it comes to, our own gardens and raising our own animals. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to have a dairy cow on half an acre or an acre of land. There's no reason. But they're going that this is the new biosecurity. Our food is biosecurity now. We have to be conscious of biosecurity. Well, to me, a garden and having a cow tied up in the backyard is biosecurity, right? Exactly. To me, it's my biosecurity. It may not be the government's biosecurity. Yes. Right. Yes. They don't want us to save enough money. They don't want us to be self-sufficient. Right. They want us to be absolutely dependent on them and they can control every part of our lives. Right. They need us to be a cog in the wheel, right? To keep the machine going. And the beautiful part about it is that the answer to all of this is just not non-compliance. Right. Just say no. Just say no. With COVID, hopefully people learned from COVID. That if the doctors had stood up, if even one hospital, if half of those doctors had stood up and said, no, we are not going to comply with the COVID vaccine requirements. We're not going to play your coding game of COVID so you can get paid a ton of money for every diagnosis. We're not going to
use the standard regimen and force that down patients' throats. We're not going to say that patients can't have family members in here when they're dying and sick and in the ICU. We're not going to go, this is bad medicine. This is unethical, immoral. We're going to question this vaccine because it doesn't make any medical sense that you're releasing this vaccine on the entire world with a brand new technology that has not been tested when we haven't been able to see honest reviews and honest the disclosure of what's in the vaccine, what's in the virus,
Right.
and what testing has been done before you're releasing this on the entire world. All it would have taken was 50 doctors at one hospital all stand up and say no.
Right.
The
Right.
reason we don't have vaccine passports now is because 30% of us had the guts to say, no, I'm not having it. I'm not doing it.
Yes.
I'm not going to travel or whatever. Have
Yes.
enough flight attendants, enough military say no,
Yep.
we're not doing it. So they had to step back and make a new plan. Believe me, and you want to talk about what we learned from COVID, we're going to have to put into practice when it's talking about central bank digital currency and digital IDs.
Yes.
Because those digital IDs are going to have all your medical information on them too.
They're going to have everything. They're going to have every
Everything.
text, every email,
Everything.
every bank
And they're going to be
account.
right. And they're going to be programmable so that your information can be changed by
That's right.
somebody potentially. And then, then look out. And or it could be deleted. And then you will no longer exist because your digital ID, because you don't exist unless your digital ID exists. I mean, that kind of ridiculous stuff. You won't be able to transact any business without your digital ID and your CBDCs, your central bank digital currency. So anyway, I have a talk on that too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very real thing that's coming down the pipeline quickly. And again, we're dealing with people who fail to see the complexity of the system. And, I've already seen tweets and people say things like, we already have digital money. We already do digital banking. This is already here. I heard the exact same thing when with the vaccine passport, when they rolled the vaccine passport out in Canada, people were like, oh, you're ridiculous. You already have a vaccine passport. And they show this little card that you had when you were a baby, right? Like the disconnect and the lack of understanding about technology and where this is actually at is mind-blowing to me.
Well, and just it's the brilliantly incremental nature that they have introduced and kind of brainwashed us and groomed us. They have groomed us over decades to just accept this and this and this and this. The difference with our transactions are digitized, computerized, right? Our transactions are, but I can still take a dollar bill or a piece of gold or silver or something of value and transact with you without anybody else interfering.
Right.
With the CBDCs, that will no longer be possible. And you may go in to buy your groceries one week and they say, you know what, we kind of think you bought enough groceries last week, so we're not gonna approve that transaction. Or you misbehaved, you spoke out against this system, so we're gonna freeze your account, just like the Canadian truckers. Now try and live. Now try and live because you were naughty.
Yes. And I feel that society has already been groomed to support this kind of behavior. I live in the country, right? So I go and I do my shopping. I buy a lot of stuff. I have a 19-year-old boy in my house that trains athletically. Like he is an empty bucket that I'm constantly filling. So when I go do my grocery shopping, I buy a lot of stuff because I don't run to the store all the time. And there is not one time in the last 2 years where someone hasn't commented on the amount of food I'm buying. So it's either the person that is checking me out that makes comments like, wow, I've never seen an order this big. Or, wow, did you get everything you needed?
Yeah.
Or somebody has stopped me in the store and asked me why I'm buying so much.
Seriously?
Yes. Because when COVID came, it was, don't be a hoarder. Don't rush out and buy paper towels. Don't rush out and buy all the stuff. It's like, well, I'm only here, once every 2.5, 3 weeks, and I have a family to feed.
And is it any of their business?
Is it any of their business? But this is what COVID has done. It has given people permission to say things to you that they would never have said to you prior.
Right.
And that's just un-American.
But it's completely the Chinese Communist Party. That's how they depended on people ratting each other out.
Self-policing, right? They want people to self-police, and then your community to police you so that they don't have to.
Right.
And I'm absolutely stunned at how quickly Americans fell into that trap.
I know. It was frightening how absolutely little minion automatons or something. Yeah, you just tell us what to do, Dr. Fauci, and we'll do it. And we'll make sure that everybody else does it too, or we're just going to go beat them up. I mean, whoa.
And then
their evil plan is working, right?
Yeah. Yes. And evil is right. You said, it's brilliant how they take these steps. I hate giving them any credit. It's sheer evil.
It's absolutely
maniacal.
It's like Voldemort, right? He did terrible things, but great things, right? Terrible, but great. Again, and these guys it's an absolutely brilliant plan that they've been very, and there's a whole history behind it. That is, this really is a plan.
Yes.
That a certain group came up with 100 years ago, and they have been incrementally, they are achieving their goal brilliantly and very patiently and putting everything in place. So this isn't haphazard. This isn't new. This has been going on for at least 100 years. At least.
Yes. And one of the
first need to know that.
Yes. One of the first steps in that plan that started back 100 years ago was the invention of petrochemicals, right? Where they threw all of the stuff that they had gathered from like homeopathy and Native American wisdom. They threw all that out because they couldn't use that in this model of Rockefeller medicine.
Right.
And we lost so much. We've lost so much, and people need to understand that. Like, you should be mad about science right now. You should be mad because humanity's been cheated, because there's a model out there that is designed for profit and to make products. They will invent labels for new diseases because they got a product they want to roll out.
Exactly. Right. Mental illness is a classic example. ADHD, ADD, ADHD, all of it.
Yeah. How much further could we be along with real, cures, real healing, real mentorship through lifestyle changes?
And
we didn't have this entity that just puts us in this box where it's got to be under this code. It has to have this solution. The doctors must act in this way. Like, people should be outraged, and they're not. They're taking their poison. They have now been injured by their poison, and they're going back to them to get help for the poison that they injected them with.
Exactly. So you can parallel the explosion of the use of vaccines in kids and mandatory vaccines all the time.
Yeah.
So you can track that, and it's exactly overlaps with the increase in autoimmune disease and autism. Exactly, like the same trajectory. Yep. What's the most common ad you see on television, on any news station? Anti-autoimmune drugs for immune disease, eczema, lupus, right? All these things. And we have autoimmune disease because we're messing with our immune system so much through all these vaccines. There's just no way to not believe that. But, what they also did with their brilliant plan was brilliant ways for us to be distracted.
Yes.
Brilliant diversions and entertainment and sports and movies and music and all these things. Look over here at this bright, shiny thing, and you're not going to pay any attention to what we're doing here. Yeah. It's been brilliant, and it's really sad how many people don't even want to know. They don't want to know.
They don't want the party to
happening because it might mean that they have to stop. They have to get off their little TikTok or whatever, their Instagram account or Facebook, and pay attention, and maybe have to do something. Maybe have to, have some consideration for something other than their Facebook friends, which is really sad and pathetic. And it would be fine. I wouldn't mind what they do, except that it's having a huge effect on me.
Yes.
Their inactivity, their ignorance about what's going on, their lack of incentive
Concern.
to engage, right? To engage in the process.
Yes.
Is having a
Uninterested.
huge effect on the rest of us.
Yes. Yes. And you know, there's no consideration for what has been won here in this country. It's just mocking freedom. Like it's appalling.
Right.
It's absolutely appalling. And I don't know how we reinstate that. I think there's going to be a lot of pain before we are capable of coming back and realizing, okay, we shouldn't be mocking freedom.
Yeah. I
do have to work for good things.
Right. I think, I think there's going to have to be a revival in more than one way. There's going to have to be a revival happen. And unfortunately, it's, I'm old. I'm retired. So I'm glad I'm old at this point, because I don't really want to have to live through what I think is probably going to happen to our country. But at the same time, I'm retired and I have time to fight. And so it's my generation's last chance. We are the last generation that can change this, because we're the last generation who knows what it used to be like before all this stuff.
Exactly. And
the increments were happening during my lifetime, but my generation is the last one to know enough to recognize what has happened.
Yes.
Because we knew what it was like before.
Yeah.
So it's our
young people don't know what they don't know. They don't,
right, exactly.
they don't know any other way. So they don't know what it's like to wake up on a farm in the morning and go take care of animals.
Yeah.
If that becomes
and be able to do what you want to do.
Yes. Go where you want to go.
Right. As long as you didn't have somebody else doing it, you got to do it. It's craziness. So, I think it's those of us who remember what it was like and recognize a huge difference just in the past 15 years.
Yes.
That it's our job to take care of it for everybody else, and to at least let people know what has happened, how it's different.
Yeah. And keep shining a light on the past, because they're trying to change history. They're trying to say, oh, that's not the way it was. That wasn't the word for that. You see this constant change of language and definition. One of the most bold ones they did was changing the definition of vaccine early on.
Right.
And so if we don't keep telling our young people, listen, this is how it was. This is what we were able to do. We were able to jump on a plane and go wherever we wanted. Because at some point, that's probably going to not be an option. And we're going to have to fight to regain that option.
Right.
It's so much harder to fight to regain that freedom than it is to protect the freedom now. All we have to do to protect the freedom now is not comply. Right.
That's the only even who knows if elections, who knows if they have ownership of elections at this point, which I kind of think they do.
Yeah.
There's no way other than the individual just saying, or getting together in a group and saying, just say no, say no, don't let them do this. That that's the only weapon we'll have, because we're not going to have the weapon of the ballot box.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
It's just not going to make any difference.
Yeah. And that's where we went wrong too, is we considered our weapon, our only weapon was the ballot box. And that's not the way government was designed to work. Government was designed for people to push back constantly throughout every day of every year. No, we don't want to see that. We don't want that. We don't want that. And people stopped engaging because life was so good.
Yeah. Right. And our founding fathers said, this republic, this constitution is only going to work as long as the average citizen stays engaged and makes sure that honest and worthy people are elected to office. And we totally dropped that ball.
Yes.
Dropped that ball, 100 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and now people, they fill their time with club volleyball and ushering kids to and from sports and going, and that's all great, but you also got to keep this thing going.
Right.
Otherwise, you're not going to have the volleyball and
Right.
the baseball.
Right. But sometimes they have to
Learn the
see the
hard way.
results before they'll even believe that something like that could happen. And that's when it's sad, because then it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's unfortunately coming, and there's going
I
to
do
be
too.
some big pain before things get better.
I agree. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with me today. It was
Thank you.
eye-opening talk, and I'm just so grateful you're out there doing this kind of work.
Good. Thanks. Well, you and I both, right? We're out there. We're just, blabbing away.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to shut us up.
Exactly.
Thank you. And thank you for being a guest on the Naturally Inspired podcast today.
Thank you, and take care.
You too. If the Naturally Inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the Naturally Inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4863.